If I asked you who runs the world, what would you say? The President of the United States, the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, or maybe the tech oligarchs in Silicon Valley? You would be wrong. While we argue about politics, while we distract ourselves with social media wars, there is a silent entity that sits above it all. It doesn't have an army. It doesn't have a flag. It doesn't even have a face. It is a code, a complex web of algorithms living on a server farm in Wenatchee, Washington. It is known simply as Aladdin. Aladdin controls, or at least oversees, assets worth $21 trillion. Let me put that number in perspective for you. That is not just more money than exists in any bank. That is more than the GDP of Japan, Germany, India, and the United Kingdom combined. Every single day, this artificial intelligence decides which companies survive and which ones die. It decides if your pension fund grows or if it vanishes. It decides the price of the house you want to buy and the interest rate on the credit card in your pocket. We think we live in a free market capitalism, but the data suggests we are actually living in a simulation run by a single operating system. And the terrifying part, it wasn't built by a government. It wasn't built to save us. It was built by one man in a desperate attempt to save himself from a mistake that almost cost him everything. This is the story of how a piece of software ate the global economy. And why, if it ever crashes, we all go down with it. To understand the machine, we have to understand its architect. The year is 1986. Wall Street is booming. Greed is good isn't just a movie quote. It's the philosophy of the era. In the middle of this chaos stands a tall, ambitious bond trader named Larry Fink. He is a star at the investment bank First Boston. He is the guy who basically invented the mortgage-backed security, the very financial instrument that would later destroy the world in 2008. But back then, it was a gold mine. Larry is making the bank millions of dollars. He is on track to become the CEO. He feels invincible until he isn't. In the second quarter of 1986, Larry's department didn't just lose money, they lost $100 million. In today's money, that's nearly $250 million. Gone. In a blink. Why did it happen? Larry Fink wasn't stupid. His team wasn't lazy. They lost because they were blind. They had bet on interest rates staying stable, but the data they were using was fragmented. They had one computer for stocks, one for bonds, one for risk. None of them talked to each other. They were driving a Ferrari at 200 miles per hour, but looking through a straw. Fink was fired. The humiliation was total. He went from the Prince of Wall Street to a pariah. But in that exile, while licking his wounds, Larry Fink had an epiphany, a realization that would change the course of financial history. He realized that Wall Street's biggest problem wasn't a lack of money. It was a lack of information, or rather, the inability to process the ocean of information that existed. Risk wasn't something you could feel in your gut. Risk was a math problem, and if it was a math problem, a computer could solve it. In 1988, Fink launched a new company in a tiny one-room office. He called it BlackRock. Most startups on Wall Street focus on sales. They want to sell stocks, sell bonds, sell dreams. Fink did the opposite. He wanted to sell safety. He hired a team of brilliant mathematicians and engineers. Their mandate was simple, but impossible. Build me a dashboard. I want to see everything. Every bond, every stock, every currency, every variable. And I want to see how they affect each other in real time. They called this system the Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network, or for short, ALADDIN. For the first decade, Aladdin was BlackRock's secret weapon. It was their proprietary crystal ball. While other banks were guessing, BlackRock was calculating. While others were gambling, BlackRock was engineering. But nobody outside the firm really cared. To the giants like Goldman Sachs or Lehman Brothers, BlackRock was just a boring bond shop. Safe, dull, irrelevant. Then came 2008, the year the casino caught fire. When the housing bubble burst, the global financial system didn't just crack, it shattered. The biggest banks in the world, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, AIG, were suddenly holding trillions of dollars in toxic assets. These were complex derivatives that no one understood. No one knew what they were worth. Were they worth 100 cents on the dollar? Or zero? Panic spread like a virus. The banks stopped lending because they didn't trust each other. The ATMs were days away from running dry. The U.S. government needed to bail out the system, but they had a massive problem. They didn't know how to price the garbage. How do you buy a bad loan if you don't know how bad it is? The Federal Reserve, with all its economists, didn't have the tools to analyze the mess. So, in a moment of desperation, Tim Geithner, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, picked up the phone. He didn't call J.P. Morgan. He didn't call Goldman Sachs. He called the man with the machine. The U.S. government hired BlackRock to clean up the mess. They gave Aladdin the keys to the kingdom. Specifically, they asked Aladdin to analyze and manage the toxic assets of Bear Stearns and AIG. This was the turning point. This was the moment Aladdin stopped being a tool and started being the system. Suddenly, BlackRock wasn't just a participant in the market. They were the referee. They were the ones telling the government and the world what the price of reality actually was. By the time the dust settled, BlackRock had emerged from the rubble, not just unscathed, but infinitely more powerful. They had seen the books of their competitors. They had earned the trust of the regulators. Larry Fink realized something profound. Why just use Aladdin for ourselves? Why not rent it out? And that is exactly what they did. Today, Aladdin is leased to nearly every major financial institution on the planet. Vanguard uses it. State Street uses it. The biggest insurance companies use it. Half of the top 10 insurers in the world rely on it. Even Apple and Microsoft use it to manage their massive cash piles. Think about that for a second. We represent competition as the heart of capitalism. Coke versus Pepsi. Ford versus GM. Goldman versus Morgan Stanley. But if all of them are using the same brain to make their decisions, if they are all relying on the same risk models, the same data, the same algorithms, are they really competing? Or are they just different limbs of the same organism? This brings us to the herding problem. And this is where the story gets truly dangerous. Because when $21 trillion follows the same map, what happens if the map is wrong? So, what does Aladdin actually do? Is it a superintelligence like Skynet? Is it a chatbot like ChatGPT? No, it is something far more pragmatic and far more terrifying. Imagine you are building an airplane. Before you fly it with real passengers, you put it in a wind tunnel. You blast it with air. You freeze it. You heat it up. You simulate a lightning strike. You want to see if the wings fall off before you leave the ground. Aladdin is a wind tunnel for money. It uses a mathematical technique called Monte Carlo simulations. Basically, Aladdin doesn't try to predict the future. It creates every possible future. It looks at a portfolio, your pension fund, for example, and it asks, what happens to this money if oil prices double tomorrow? What happens if a war breaks out in Taiwan? What happens if a new pandemic hits in 2030? It runs these scenarios thousands of times a day. It stresses the system until it finds the breaking point. This sounds incredibly useful. And it is. It gives investors X-ray vision. Before Aladdin, you bought a bond and hoped for the best. With Aladdin, you can see exactly how much risk you are holding down to the penny. But here is where the power shifts. To run these simulations, Aladdin needs data. A lot of data. It needs to know everything about every asset class in the world. And because nearly every major bank uses Aladdin, BlackRock gets to see the collective position of the entire global economy. Think about it. If you are playing poker and you can see everyone else's cards, are you gambling or are you just collecting rent? This information advantage is unparalleled in human history. The CIA would kill for the kind of economic intelligence that sits on BlackRock servers every morning. And this surveillance capitalism extends beyond just banking. Aladdin's tentacles reach into the real world. Through its massive index funds, BlackRock, guided by Aladdin, is a top shareholder in almost everything. Look at your phone. Apple. BlackRock is a top owner. Microsoft. BlackRock. The bank you use. BlackRock. The media company you are watching right now. Probably BlackRock. Aladdin ensures that all these companies are efficient. It ensures stability. But in complex systems, efficiency often comes at the price of resilience. By optimizing the world for profit, Aladdin has inadvertently created the conditions for a perfect storm. In engineering, there is a concept called single point of failure. It means if one specific part breaks, the entire machine dies. For the global economy, that point is Aladdin. Imagine thousands of ships navigating a treacherous ocean. In the past, each captain had their own map, their own compass, and their own judgment. If one captain made a mistake, one ship sank. The fleet survived. Today, Aladdin is the only lighthouse. Every captain is looking at the same light. Every algorithm is following the same signal. So, what happens if the lighthouse moves? Or worse, what happens if it goes dark? Financial regulators call this herding behavior. If Aladdin decides that, based on its code, tech stocks are suddenly too risky, it doesn't just whisper that to BlackRock. It flashes that warning on the dashboards of Vanguard, State Street, Deutsche Bank, and HSBC simultaneously. If everyone tries to sell at the exact same second, there are no buyers. Liquidity evaporates. The market doesn't just fall, it vanishes. This isn't theoretical. We saw a glimpse of it in the flash crashes of the last decade. But a crash triggered by Aladdin wouldn't last minutes. It could trigger a global depression that makes 1929 look like a vacation. But the risk isn't just a crash. The risk is control. Through Aladdin, BlackRock has begun to enforce a new set of rules on the corporate world. It's called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. On paper, it sounds noble. Save the planet. Improve diversity. But in practice, it is a tool of compliance. If a company doesn't play by Aladdin's ESG rules, their score drops. When the score drops, the algorithm tells the world's capital to flee. The company is starved of investment. They go bankrupt. Aladdin has become a de facto government. It can pass laws without a vote. It can punish industries without a trial. It can decide which energy sources we use and which values we must adopt. Larry Fink has openly stated, behaviors are going to have to change, and we have to force behaviors. Force behaviors. Those aren't the words of a banker. Those are the words of a ruler. We worry about AI like Terminator sending robots to kill us. But the real threat isn't a robot with a gun. It's an algorithm with a spreadsheet that can quietly turn off the lights on your economy, devalue your currency, and foreclose on your home, all because a variable changed in a server room 3,000 miles away. And here is the final question. Can we turn it off? The financial system has become so addicted to Aladdin's clarity, so dependent on its risk models, that pulling the plug now would likely cause the very collapse it was designed to prevent. We are trapped in the cockpit of a plane we no longer know how to fly, guided by an autopilot we cannot override. There is a philosophical concept called reflexivity. It means that our belief about the future actually changes the future. If everyone believes a bank will crash, they withdraw their money, and the bank crashes. The belief makes it true. Aladdin is the ultimate engine of reflexivity. Because it manages so much money, its predictions aren't just predictions. They are instructions. If Aladdin's model predicts that the fossil fuel industry will shrink by 20% in the next decade, it directs trillions of dollars away from oil companies. Guess what happens? Those companies can't drill. They can't expand. They shrink. Aladdin didn't predict the shrinkage. Aladdin caused it. This gives BlackRock the power to reshape civilization. If Larry Fink and his algorithm decide that the future is electric vehicles, then the capital flows to Tesla and Rivian. If they decide the future is rental housing instead of home ownership, the capital flows to buying up suburbs. We vote for politicians every 2 or 4 years, but Aladdin votes every single millisecond, and its votes count for a lot more than yours. We are witnessing the birth of a planned economy, not planned by a communist Politburo in Moscow, but planned by a capitalist algorithm in Washington state. It creates a world that is stable, efficient, and profitable for the asset holders. But for the rest of us, it creates a world where we are merely guests in an economy designed for someone else. So, who is pulling the strings? If BlackRock controls the corporations, who controls BlackRock? You might think, well, Larry Fink owns it. Not really. He is the CEO, the face, the founder, but he only owns a small fraction of the stock. BlackRock is a public company. That means it is owned by its shareholders. So, let's look at the largest shareholders of BlackRock. Number 1 on the list, the Vanguard Group. Okay, so Vanguard owns BlackRock. But who owns Vanguard? If you look at the portfolio of Vanguard's funds, you will see their top holdings. Guess who is at the top? BlackRock. It is a circular firing squad of ownership, a closed loop. BlackRock owns Vanguard. Vanguard owns BlackRock. They own each other, and together they own everything else. Coca-Cola and Pepsi, owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. Pfizer and Moderna, owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. CNN and Fox News, owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. It is the illusion of choice. You can choose which soda to drink, which news channel to watch, which car to drive. But at the end of the day, the profit flows into the same massive reservoir. And sitting at the center of that reservoir, directing the flow, is Aladdin. The algorithm doesn't care about the circular logic. It only cares about the optimization of the whole. In the old world, power was visible. Kings wore crowns, dictators wore uniforms. You knew who to rebel against. In the new world, power is invisible. It hides behind complexity. It hides behind non-disclosure agreements. It hides behind a user interface that looks boring. Larry Fink is mortal. Eventually, he will retire. He will pass away. But Aladdin is code. Code does not age. Code does not sleep. Code does not feel guilt. We have built a machine to maximize efficiency, and we did such a good job that we made ourselves obsolete in the process. The next time you hear about a market crash, or a housing crisis, or a sudden recession, don't look at the politicians. Don't look at the news anchors. Look at the ghost in the machine. Because the scariest thing isn't that Aladdin might make a mistake and crash the world. The scariest thing is, what if the world we are living in right now, with all its inequality and struggle, is exactly what the machine wanted to create? BlackRock and Aladdin are just one head of the Hydra. There is another giant, even more secretive, that we mentioned today: Vanguard. Unlike BlackRock, Vanguard isn't public. No one knows exactly what goes on inside their private walls. If you want to see us expose the secrets of Vanguard in the next documentary, you need to subscribe and comment Vanguard below. And if you want to know the only asset that Aladdin cannot control, click this video right here. It might be your only exit strategy. If you want to see us expose the secrets of Vanguard in the next documentary, you need to subscribe and comment Vanguard below.